What's up, everybody? It's Corey from the Grease Pole Podcast, and it feels like we just did one of these motherfuckers 48 hours ago, right? Shout out to the NFL for trumpeting player safety, and ultimately it's all about the dollars, right? Thursday night football, the Birds travel to Houston across time zones to face the Texans, and as we discussed, this kind of reeked of a trap game to me, and I know I wasn't the only one with that opinion, but you get that short week's rest, you travel across time zones. It doesn't matter how good or bad the team is, and yes, Houston's cheeks, but that's a lot on a team, right? The body's not meant to be able to, heal and play a game fucking 72 hours later. So, Birds travel to Houston and ultimately get the win, right? 8-0, best start in franchise history, so there's that. But let's go ahead and take a moment, like we do every week, to recap the performance tiers. And if you want to know the following tiers, all four of them, how they got named, what they did, and the significance of each of them, click the link above that you see, and that will take you to the intro video, which delves into the explanation for each tier. So, with that being said, let's start where we start each and every week with number 20, Weapon X, the Brian Dawkins tier. And this dude's becoming a mainstay here, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And he snagged his 5th interception in 4 games. He leads the league now with those 5 interceptions. And it wasn't just a lucky pick either. His ass just simply made that play. And it's the Davis Mills pass to Chris Moore with Gardner-Johnson just laying out to snag the ball out of the air before it hit the ground. This was 1,000% the turning point of the game. This shit was tied at 14. And, the Eagles' offense had gone 3 and out to start the second half. And that ensuing possession after the interception ended with an A.J. Brown touchdown, Mr. Piss in a Cup, Mr. Drug Test. And the Birds held the lead the rest of the way and didn't look back. So that was very much, that play was the catalyst to this team being 8-0. Don't kid yourself. So what a transaction he's turned out to be by Howie Roseman. And you love to see him make another play. And, it's always good to see someone from your team atop a statistical category in the league, much like he is now with interceptions. To the defensive line now for the Dawkins tier, Javon Hargrave. 97 had 3 sacks on the night from the defensive tackle spot, and that's a hell of a night if you're an edge rusher, right? Let alone an interior defensive lineman who absolutely worked rookie first-rounder Kenyon Green all night, making it 5 sacks for him in the last 2 games now for Hargrave. And it's easy to kind of forget about some of these rotational dudes on defense with guys like Gardner-Johnson and Darius Slay garnering so much attention, and you also had Jordan Davis injured. So Hargrave's presence was fucking necessary up the middle, and it was crucial in terms of the defensive line being effective in this game. So hell of a game for 97 with 3 sacks on the night again. Defensive tackle spot, fucking incredible night for him. And we flip it now to the offensive side of the ball. Let's talk fantasy with number 88, Dallas Goedert, who had 8 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. And it was Goddard who stepped up to move the chains on, in several situations when the Eagles needed it in a tight game. And we talked about last week how with so many mouths to feed on this offense, it's not always going to be A.J. Brown every week with 3 touchdowns in the first half. That's not feasible or realistic. So, Devontae Smith had a run where he was the hot weapon for a couple weeks in early October. And Thursday was Goddard's night to lead the way through the air, and that's exactly what he did. He came through clutch for QB1, and he was a huge reason as well that the team still is undefeated entering Week 10. So tons of love sent to those 3 dudes for being the guys that led this team to a fucking win in Jalen Hurts' hometown of Houston. As we move on, Charlottesville represent the Chris Long tier, a guy who's also becoming a mainstay here on these weekly tiers. Miles Sanders, who had 17 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown, and he averaged 5.5 yards per carry. And it's awesome to see, we say this all the time, but it's great to see him finally get worked in consistently this year. And we've said on the pod, going back to the Peterson days, when this dude's given the opportunity and the volume, he's incredibly effective and efficient. And here's another example of yet just another tight game, much like that Jacksonville game where Sanders is the difference in the game by keeping the chains moving and keeping the offense on the field. So he's in a contract year. He's having the best year of his career so far. I loved the pick at the time. And no, it's not just because he's a Penn State guy. But this dude's got a shit ton of talent. And all you've got to do is give him the looks and watch He's not going to break one off on you every single time, but he's consistent. Give him the volume and he'll do something with it. And that's what Sirianni's done this year. And you're seeing it pay dividends. As we move on to the Nelson Aguilar tier, we're going to put the run defense here because Dameon Pierce ran for 139 yards on 27 carries. And Christ, even Rex Burkhead had a 9-yard carry. The defense couldn't stop Pierce either at the line of scrimmage or at the second level. This motherfucker looked like Marshawn Lynch out there. Power runner, power back in 2022. It was wild to see, honestly. And it got so bad at one point where Houston didn't even pretend to pass while the game was still close. They just kept turning and handing the ball off every single fucking play. And it's like, why are we not just loading the box up? We know what let Davis Mills beat you with no Brandon Cooks, please. And the absence of Jordan Davis didn't help here. The Marvin Wilson gimmick wasn't working at all. And Pierce was able to gain yardage at will. And if it weren't for that interception that we mentioned by Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the outcome of his game could have been entirely different. So run defense, gets a mention this week in the Aguilar tier for not quite meeting the expectation that you thought going into the game. As we move on to the dumpster, the tire fire of the proceedings here, the cheeks of the cheeks, the Chip Kelly tier, and it's. I always try to mention something in these. I never would just want to leave a tier blank, right? So here I'm going to put that play where the Birds didn't get the snap off before Houston challenged that Miles Sanders first down, and I don't remember if it was late first half or early second half, but it took place while the game was tied at 14, where Miles Sanders he tripped up and was touched by a Houston defender while his knee touched the turf. And he was absolutely down. It was the right call, but you see this all the time. Teams run to the line of scrimmage fucking frantically like the goddamn hot and ready lights on at Krispy Kreme and try to fucking fire the snap off because they know what's coming. They know the red hanky's coming on the field. And rather than hurry the line and get in the playoff, you see Hurts calling a series of audibles from the shotgun formation, and there was no urgency, which allowed Lovie Smith and Houston the opportunity to challenge the play, which was successful, and now it's fourth down, and now you got to punt it away to the Texans. So, again, Houston entering the game, I think, was 1-5-1, and not a great team. Obviously, we get it. But still, these are things, as we've said, a lot of these little small minor mistakes you can't make in the playoffs. They add up to much bigger shit. So things to correct now to where when January rolls around and you're not playing these shitty teams anymore, you're playing teams that matter. And if you don't win, your season's done. This is the time to get this shit, to learn from it and to clear it up. So, which again, our guy Sirianni seems to be, solid at making adjustments. So hopefully this gets added to the list as we go into week 10 next week against Washington on Monday Night Football. And this was a game that, I had circled. I really wanted to go to this fucking game, right? Because it was supposed to be Carson Wentz's return to the link. And it's not anymore because Carson's riding the pine and in favor of ODU alum, noodle arm fucking Taylor Heineke. But at the same time, he's got them playing well enough to be in the conversation for a wild card right now. But, you get 11 days between games, and that's the plus of getting the Thursday night game out of the way and getting the win, staying in the win column. And it's better, you add another day because rather than going from Thursday night football to Sunday, a regularly time slotted game the following week, you get another day of rest because you go from Thursday to a Monday night game. So plenty of time in between until the Commanders come to town, and you try to stay 9-0 on the year. You try to stay undefeated and atop the division. And there's plenty of time. We saw the team dial in and focus on a short week, and that focus has to stay, obviously, as you go through essentially a quasi-bye week with a week and a half without a game. But it's a division game. You're at home. It's prime time. They'll be up for it, and the link will be rocking like it always is. So there's that. There's our tiers for week 9 against Houston on Thursday night at Energy Stadium. Who stood out to you? Who pissed you off? Who had you hollering at your TV? Let us know in the comments section below. That's what it's used for, or whatever you so choose to use it for. Hit the subscribe button if you like. Way more original Eagles content coming your way. And the weekly tiers every week. And the podcast each and every Monday, which you can find on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts whichever platform you prefer. So there's that, and we will see you on Monday for episode 118 of the Grease Pole Podcast, and next time here on the YouTube channel. Thanks for joining. As always, go Birds.